Protesters and counter-protesters took to the streets in cities right across this country today over gender identity and sexual orientation policies in schools. Protesters under the banner 1 Million March for Children are advocating for the elimination of teaching about sexual orientation and gender identity in schools. But there are also crowds of counter-protesters condemning those protests as homophobic and transphobic. That back and forth garnered national attention when New Brunswick and Saskatchewan adopted policies that require parental consent for students under 16 to change their pronouns. Federal NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh joined counter-protesters in Ottawa this morning. He's with us here now. Hi, Mr. Singh. Pleasure to welcome you back to studio.
Thanks so much.
I appreciate you making the time. I wanted to start off actually on those protests today and ask you why you felt it was important to help lead a group of counter-protesters.
Yeah, I think this is a story of there's two different groups here. There are some bad actors that are purposely punching down on vulnerable people, and I wanted folks in the queer community, from the trans community, to know that I got your back, that my team has your back, we are with you, we're on the front lines, we're going to support you. But I do want to acknowledge there's some people I don't think that know exactly what's going on. They're conflating parental consent and parental involvement with really protecting kids. Obviously, parents that love their kids should be involved in everything that their kids do. But for some kids, the home is not a safe place. And I know what that's like. When I was a kid, my parents are both very loving, but my dad was struggling with an addiction. And so sometimes the home was a scary place. And my safe place was school or libraries. And so for those kids who feel unsafe, we want to create a safe environment for them in school. And I think it's important that we're seeing more and more conservative premiers distract from the issues of housing or groceries or their crumbling healthcare system and punching down on vulnerable people as a way to distract. And that, to me, is a very serious problem.
It's interesting that you point out the sort of framing of the issue, because certainly when I've interviewed those premiers on this subject, they choose to frame it as an issue of parental rights versus anything to do with minority rights. And polling, they point out, supports them in that a majority of Canadians, for example, through an Angus Reid poll recently, say that there should be, at least parents should be informed versus, they're not all saying they need to give consent, but they should at least be informed, for example, if their child wants to change their pronoun. How do you navigate the issue knowing that that's the reality of how parents feel versus, the interests as you describe them of protecting kids who don't feel safe?
I think that it really is those two stories. That we need to distinguish between some parents who just don't fully understand what's going on and think their parental rights are being attacked versus those who know exactly what they're doing. They're targeting marginalized communities and punching down on them and using them as a scapegoat to distract from real issues. And I think it's important to call out, we do want schools to be safe, we want our kids to be safe, and we want our parents to be involved. But just acknowledge that the policies that we put in place should be the best ones to keep the most kids safe and ensure that they are not harming themselves or putting themselves in a position where they don't feel welcome.